All right, and welcome to part four of our multiplayer game. So far, we're able to play against ourselves on a computer, but really that defeats the purpose of multiplayer. So let's have a look at how we could join or connect with another person in our class or over the internet or things like that. Now, as I mentioned, probably at the very beginning here, over the internet requires another level of complexity because you have to get involved with your networking and your routing and a whole bunch of other stuff that we I don't want to play with at the moment, but at least let's say we're trying to create a LAN party, trying to create a game where you could play it in a local network if you were all on the same Wi-Fi or if you were all connected, say, in the lab like you are here. Um, and if you're interested, you could look at something called port forwarding to be able to do this over the internet if you wanted to play house to house or something like that. In this case, let's just start with playing in our local class. And to start with, you're going to need to know a little bit about how computers identify each other. And they do this with something called an IP address. And your computer actually has multiple IP addresses often. Sometimes one for the Wi-Fi, sometimes one if you're plugged in, sometimes you have two different kinds of network cards. So there's actually multiple different ones that we have here. So I am going to, first of all, find out what my IP address is. Now, you can do that in a couple different ways. If you went to the command prompt on a Windows computer, you can actually see what the IP address of your computer is. ipconfig um, config slash all, oops, ipconfig slash all. There we go. And you get a bunch of information about your computer. And the one you're probably looking for here is your preferred address, your IPv4 there. That is a local address, but then there's also addresses outside that you'll see here, and you'll find if you go onto the internet, you can find them. There's a whole pile of IP addresses, and it all depends on your computer's configuration. But Godot, fortunately, can grab all of them, and then we can figure out which one we need. So I am going to set this up on my lobby here, right at the beginning. And I am going to do this. This doesn't have to be done like we did previously on the enter tree. We can use our func, our ready function here to set this up. And to begin with, I just want to see what they are. So I am going to say var IPs. I'll make a new variable to store them. And Godot has a built-in IP object to be able to get information about your current computer. And we have a function called get local addresses in there. So right at the beginning, let's just when I start my game, let's figure that out. And what I could do is just print the IPs, just so I can see what they are. And if I ran this game, and this is important to know because when you are a server, what you're going to need to do is to send out or let your other people know, hey, this is my IP address if you want to join it. Here we should be able to, oops, right down below, there we go. We can see here there's a whole bunch of IP addresses. We've got this one here, we've got this one here, we've got this one here. There you can see, in fact, the local host to let you know that this is also an IP address. Some other crazy ones in here, and you'll see actually what we're looking for is the last one there. And turns out when we grab them all, the last one is generally the one we're looking for. So I want that IP address. And you can see that it is actually given to us is a list of IP addresses. There's IP address at 0, IP address at 1, IP address at 2, IP address at 3, IP address at 4, IP address at 5. And depending on how many network cards, you could have multiple ones. But the last one is the one that is our local network IP address. So using that, if I could grab that, I could then share that with somebody else. And I could always do it by going to that ipconfig thing down there, but that's a kind of a pain. We want to be able to pretty quickly just be able to tell somebody, hey, here's the address I wanted you to join. Later on, you could get way more elaborate and actually broadcast out addresses and create some kind of lobby system, but again, way more complicated than we can get into at this moment. So now that I've got all of these, let's figure out which one I want. I'm going to pick out that one and I want to share it. So let's stop that game going. So here's all of them. I want the last one. So really just being a list, IPs is a list of them. I want the last one. So I'm going to grab another variable. I'll call this is my local IP, because there's lots of different IPs in there. And that equals the last list, the last in the IP list. So if I said something like IPs and I knew that there was 5 of them, then this would be 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. That would be my local one. However, in my game design, I can't guarantee that I've only got this many IP addresses. There could be more. I just know that the last one is the one I want. So I'm going to use a little list trick there and say, well, I would like the length. Oops, let's get rid of there. I'm going to grab the len of IPs. And I'm going to take 1 away from it because it's 5 long, so I want at position 4. And now I've got the last IP address is stored in my local IP, which is kind of handy. Now, just printing it down here is not going to be very useful, so I would like to display it on my computer so that I could actually see this. And handily, let's I don't know, let's put something like right over the host button. So I'm going to, on my lobby, I'm going to add a label. And I'm going to call this host IP address. Or maybe let's call it local IP address. And I'm just going to put it over the host button because that's the most useful spot. When I host, I would want to let people know what's going on there. So let's just say instead of printing it out, I'm going to say go into the lobby, and there is a local IP address. There we go. I want to change its text to equal something like your IP address is, and then I could add local IP. There we go, just tack that onto the end. So let's give that a try now and see. That should hopefully just show off my address. Right at the beginning there. And since the person you're playing against is probably in the same room or right next side, you could say, hey, my IP address is, there we go, 1024.20.38. So super handy just before you click that host button, you could do that, or you could have it appear later on as you're showing it off or playing your game, or you could enter a waiting screen or something like that later on. Just say, here it is, hey, join my game, I'm ready to play. Speaking of which, now that I know what my IP address and I could share it with somebody who's in the room with me, they need to be able to join a game. So let's fix that part as well. And in order to join, we would probably want to type in the address somewhere like that. So I'm going to put another object in here. And we have another one called align edit, another node here. This allows us to type in, say, control that provides single line string editing. So it allows us to type in a piece of information and then use that information somewhere else. So it's kind of handy, all set up for us. So I'm just going to create that. I'm going to put that something like, I'll call it host IP enter. Give that a name there. Oh, where are you? There you are. grab you, and I would put that, I'm going to put it, let's put it right over top of the join button, because that's where I would like to put something there. What I could do as the default, if you wanted, placeholder text here, you could have that 127.0.0.1, just to kind of give people an indication of where you should join. Right now, if you joined, you would join yourself, your own computer. Or maybe not. Maybe we want to put even better here, type server IP address, or here, server IP address here, or something like that. There we go. So it's got some placeholder text there that we would type in the address and make it work. And so just before we grab that, before we continue, we're going to need to grab whatever they type in there and use that. And right here on the join button, this is pretty easy, because right now we have created the server IP address and we just put localhost in here, which means you're always going to join yourself. But really what I would like to do is just to go and grab whatever they've typed in here. And that is very nice and easy, because we can just say, I want to go to the lobby, host IP enter, and I want to grab whatever text is there. Now, I'm assuming that they've typed it in properly and that they've actually put a valid one in and they haven't just left it there. We could create some error handling and other things later on to make sure that they haven't left it empty or that they've put in something valid, but let's just presume they're working just to make sure that we can get this going here. And if I now play my game, this is going to work best if you're playing with somebody else or testing it out, but you can still test it out on your own computer. You can see here that my IP address is 1024.20.38. So I could, if I wanted to, 10.24.20.38. Let them know before they join, you've got a host. There we go, and we're ready. And if I now join this computer, boom, we have a game, and you can now play against somebody else, whatever kind of game you would like to create. And you could use what we've got right now. As I said, you could create some kind of race game or chase game, or trying to get to the flag first, capture the flag style game. Without adding any other bells and whistles. If we want some other bells and whistles, we're probably going to have to create some other things in sync. For instance, if you wanted enemies that were moving around and you had to jointly maybe did a co-op style game or something, we've got some more learning to do. But for this, hopefully gets you started on creating your own multiplayer game setup.